Hello. You ready for the poetry workshop then? I hope you've sent something in. Don't worry, if you haven't, you can get scribbling now. Give Danny a hand. We've got an epic poem to make right now. Hello and welcome to the Poetry Workshop, part of the workshop week running up to October Plenty. My name's Danny Hopkins and I'm a member of the Lions Part. I've been with the Lions Part for a long time, I think it's almost 30 years. I'm also a trustee and I'm also somebody who's written quite a lot for the Lions Part, including lots and lots and lots of verse, poetic verse, poetry, spoken aloud and performed. It's been fantastic to write for them. It's a wonderful company to write for because we have such a tradition with verse, and verse is a fantastic performance medium. But this workshop is for you, really. It's not really for me. It's for you to express yourselves through. And I've asked you in the run up to the workshop to send us some of your verses, and you have. And thank you so much for that. We've got some amazing stuff. I'll be reading some of those out in a little while. But I wondered how we could do this workshop. Of course, because of COVID, we can't sit in the same room together and we can't talk to each other. We can't share the verse. We can't talk about the words that we hear and the words that we speak. And that's a real shame. And I wanted to run this workshop as an interactive workshop as well, but then you worry about the tech, you worry about things falling over. So I really apologise we can't be with you doing this live. Maybe we will one day, that'd be great. But what I hope to do is maybe just talk through a few ideas about what poetry can be, what poetry is even. And also then to share some of your verses and perhaps give you some guidance on the verses we might want to share over the next few days, because before October Plenty, I would love to put together a really epic harvest poem, a poem that reflects the joys of the plenty and this time of year, because there is no better way of expressing that joy than through verse, the song of words. So anyway, I'll start off by having a look at some of the definitions of poetry that I've found online. It's fascinating because I thought in running up to this workshop, I realised to myself, I don't actually know what poetry is. I don't have a really clear definition as to what it is. And so I thought to myself, if I'm running a workshop and I don't know what it is, how am I going to help you guys? But then I found something strange. Nobody really knows what it is. I went through all the dictionary definitions because, when you need to find out what a word means, you go to the dictionary, don't you? And they can't agree. Here's what I found. Webster's dictionary says, poetry, metrical writing, / writing that formulates a concentrated imaginative awareness of experience in language chosen and arranged to create a specific emotional response through meaning, sound, and rhythm. Now, meaning, sound, and rhythm, I get that. But boy, quite formidable. What does the Oxford English Dictionary say? This is what they're shorter. Literary work in which special intensity is given to the expression of feelings and ideas by the use of distinctive style and rhythm. Style of rhythm, slightly different. Very interesting. I like that. I like it better. The Macmillan Dictionary says poetry is a piece of writing using beautiful or unusual language arranged in fixed lines that have a particular beat and often rhyme. Sounds like a bit of a straitjacket to me. The Cambridge Dictionary says a piece of writing in which the words are carefully chosen for the images and ideas they suggest, and in which the sounds of the words, when read aloud, often follow a particular rhythmic pattern. Quite like that. When read aloud. Collins Dictionary says, an arrangement of words, written or spoken, traditionally a rhythmical composition, sometimes rhymed, expressing experiences, ideas or emotions in a style more concentrated, imaginative and powerful than ordinary speech or prose. Some are in metre, some are in free verse. That's pretty comprehensive, I think. But still, is comprehensive a good thing? Dictionary.com. The art of rhythmical composition, written or spoken, for exciting pleasure by beautiful, imaginative or elevated thoughts. Exciting pleasure. I like that. I like that a lot. Exciting pleasure, yes. Scrabble. The Scrabble Dictionary says, poetry is a style of writing that uses a formula or organisation and that is often divided up into lines or stanzas, or it refers to something beautiful. Belt and braces. Quite like it. Okay. all the dictionaries kind of the same, but all broadly different as well. That's one of the extraordinary things. It's incredibly difficult to pin down what poetry is. I found this online. This is in a YouTube video, which might be quite interesting. Poetry is the creation of imagination, experience, and life. Poetry is the creation of imagination, experience, and life. The creation of imagination. Interesting. What about this? Poetry is a written and oral tradition composed of rhythmic words describing an experience or something of one's imagination in a way deemed beautiful and more concentrated than ordinary speech. Again, quite comprehensive. I don't know about all of this. I don't know whether we should be defining poetry. Is it there to be defined? Is that even a valid question? For me, I know when poetry is happening, when I hear it, and I can't quite tell you why. It's interesting. When you go and see a Shakespeare play, often there is a mixture of prose and verse through it. And sometimes the change from prose to verse happens in a blink of an eye, but you feel it. And it's almost like your heart feels it before your ears hear it. Something changes in the mood. Something changes in the emotional context. So poetry happens, and it's almost happening when we don't know it. So I'm not a great fan of trying to define it, but I will say this. Some of the poetry that you've sent in to me at hoppydan at hotmail.com, that's hoppydan@hotmail.com, 2 P's in hoppydan, has been fantastic, and you don't need a definition for it because it's all marvellous. I think one of the things that I would love to say about poetry, and it's really, really important, and I know a lot of people don't agree with this, but I think poetry is best appreciated out loud. It's the most marvellous performance tool you've got. It's like having an extra string to your bow as an actor when something is in verse. And so when you sent your poems in, and continue to send them in so that we can knit them all together and create something wonderful for October Plenty, an epic harvest poem. When I speak it feels so different for me, and I'm really looking forward to speaking all of your verses out loud. I'm going to speak some of them out loud already because I've had some in, and I'm going to give them the voice that they deserve. So poetry is something which in a way defies definition, but you definitely know when it's happening. It kind of doesn't obey rules, and it is a very slippery fish, which is a good thing. But for me, it's best heard out loud. I love it when the words whistle past your ears or fall into your soul and you know it's happening. I think it's also cheeky. Poetry lends itself wonderfully to comic effect and to creating sleight of hand. I think rap does that. Really good rap is a wonderful way of communicating, and it's kind of the modern form of poetry. It's a form of poetry that most young people engage with. And don't let anybody tell you that rap isn't poetry. It is. I mean, there's some good stuff and some terrible stuff, but it's all poetry. And I think we're also very lucky having the English language to play with, because the English language is so varied. It's a mongrel language. There's so much stuff in it from elsewhere as well. But there's also a load of stuff in there that you can play with when you're writing or speaking, which is reflected in how the words sound. So the sound of a lot of our words, even though they're spelt the same, they sound different. And I've got a wonderful poem here. I'm going to read a few poems today. Sorry about that. But one of my favourite poems is just this marvellous smorgasbord of different sound meanings from this gorgeous piece of word music. I kind of call poetry word music, really. It's called The Pronunciation Poem, and it's written by Anonymous, and I love it, and I think it's a perfect place for us to start today. Hopefully it'll give you some inspiration. Remember, hoppydan@hotmail.com. We want your harvest poems. Okay, here we go. The Pronunciation Poem. I take it you already know of tough and bow and cough and dough. Others may stumble, but not you. On hiccup, thorough, laugh, and through. Well done. And now you wish perhaps to learn of less familiar traps. Beware of herd, a dreadful word, that looks like beard and sounds like bird. And dead, it's said like bed, not bead. And for goodness sake, don't call it deed. Watch out for meat and great and threat. They rhyme with sweet and straight and debt. Moth is not the moth in mother, nor both in bother, broth in brother. And here is not a match for there. nor dear and fear forbear and pair. And then there's dose and rose and lose. Just look them up. And goose and choose and cork and work and card and ward and font and front and word and sword and do and go and thwart and cart. Come, I've hardly made a start. A dreadful language, man alive. I'd mastered it when I was 5. There you go. First poem of the day, pronunciation poem. Fine piece of work there from Anonymous. Very good. Can you beat it though? That's the question. Well, while you're thinking about that, I'm going to take a wander out into the garden to the apple tree. There's still a few apples left out there. And I'm going to read a poem that I wrote called The Garden. Okay, so let's see each other out there. So here I am in my garden, okay? Bit of a scruffy old apple tree. Still got a few left on it though. It's late autumn, beautiful sunny autumn day. I love it out here and it's where I go to think sometimes. But I think it's really important to not just let that be something I talk about to you like it's, I don't know, a matter of fact thing. I like to make it something more. I could just tell you about it, I could describe it blade by blade, the grass, the bushes, the trees, but I think it would be better if I told you a little bit more about it in a poem. Now, this is something I wrote a while back, and it just shows how you can elevate something and give it real meaning, exaggerate the truth about something by using verse. And this is something that's really important. Verse might not be natural, but it sure is truthful. In fact, it's like truth supercharged. Let's give this one a try. This is about my garden. The garden. I see it through hooky rose-rubbed haze, with all its lost days and drifted ways. It's the best of me. It brings with it all the joys. And with the gate shut, the world seems full grey without, as I go out, knowing there's growing going on. Every night, as dead leaves sleep until bird songs leap, again into the earth I bury tomorrow's thoughts, turn them, till and toil, until blanket sleeps dark topsoil, gives seeds the best, and saves the rest till morn. When soil awakes, the lovely bed with compost, flagstone path and shed, sharing light, the new bright, white on dark, with damp alive at last, germinate and wait. I wait in my shed shelter, the rain-checked castle, parcel full of bulbs and ready rubbed, a hollow where well-brewed tea is swallowed, filled by drizzled, busy looking out through ever-broken glass and grout. All friends are here, all time is now, all days are one, and when I am done, I look back at the patch, my haven, my little world, my lost world found, my life's allotment, my living ground. There you go. So, if I was to speak like that all the time, I think people would think I was mad and they wouldn't listen. But every now and again, when you want to fire the truth into the atmosphere and make it orbit meaning, then poetry is what works. So be really, really brave in the imagery you use. Be fantastical. Don't worry about what people might think. Just get what you feel in your heart and in your soul out and let it land on the page in any way you like. And if that comes with a rhyme or a rhythm, if that comes with heightened meaning or metaphor, simile, you name it, just let it happen, okay? And we'll knit it into this amazing epic poem that we want to write for Sunday. Okay, so remember, hoppydan@hotmail.com. Get scribbling. Right, I'm going to start reading some of yours now, but I think we might need to go to the woods for that. Hello. As you can see, we're in the woods and we're out for a walk and we're thinking of big things to say. So it's time to go and get some inspiration. I've got some of your poems with me as well. So Let's go and see what we can find. So here we are, walking through the woods, and there's my dog, Nutmeg. She's very happy. I've had a lot of people trying to get in touch with me talking about what would get them inspired, how to get inspired to write a poem, and I don't really know the answer to that really, other than, especially with the sort of poems we're after for October Plenty, just go out in the world and experience things and see how they make you feel, and see whether those poems come from somewhere which is natural, somewhere which is all around us. And then get a couple of words in your mind, and perhaps something will grow out of those words. Now, the first poem we've got here from our friends, the people who've sent the poems in, and thank you again for doing that. It's amazing. Make sure they come to hoppydan@hotmail.com. is this one, and it's from Sarah, and she is from Stevenage, and she told me in the email that she sent accompanying her poem that it was inspired by walking through a field just after it had been harvested. The combine harvesters had moved on to the next field, and there was lots of dust in the air, and the dust was going through the sunset. The sun was shining through the dust, and it was creating kind of a nutmeg coloured effect. I quite like this one because my dog's called Nutmeg, so it's not got a name, this poem, but it is, I think, really, really lovely. Okay, here we go. Molten drop to golden straw, a stolen stillness made for harvest, breathless deep, the full stop's core, tempting of fox red, stepping secret nutmeg, holding, then moulding into burnt umber, aware of potential summer's slumber. Then the moon instructs the earth, and the earth returns its heat to heaven. Thor's feast, drawn into dusk, breathe in the harvest's musk. It's great, isn't it? Thor's feast. Thor's feast. There's some kind of thunderstorm on the way. Drawn into dusk, breathe in the harvest's musk. Beautiful. So thank you, Sarah. That's absolutely stunning. And to read that one. Now the next one that came in, I can remember, I think, from the top of my head. It goes like this. Dear Mr. Greeny Man, you really are a heeny man. Thank you for our harvest. You really are the marvest. And that is from Sophie, who's 6, and she's from London. Thank you, Sophie. That's definitely going in. Keep them coming. Whether you're walking through the forest or stumbling like I've been, or coming out of the woods to find an absolutely beautiful view like this. There's inspiration everywhere. So let that power your words. See what the view makes you trip off your tongue and onto the page, and then send it to me at hoppydan@hotmail.com. Hoppydan with 2 P's. Not bad, eh, Nutmeg? Hello again. Repetition is a really useful tool when you're trying to get a poem together, when you're getting started at least. And the next poem that I've had sent to me by somebody who calls themselves the Green Man 2 is a really good example of this, how repetition can create meaning and emphasis, and means that when you read that poem out loud, you can make a choice about making it bigger or smaller. So this is called Lyme Regis, 7 AM. When the sea
is so flat, you begin to wonder. When the air is so still, you begin to wonder. When the sound of a passing plane cannot be heard through the impenetrable silence, you begin to wonder. Has the world stopped turning? That's brilliant. Thank you. Really, it's just a great way to launch a new line out of something which has already been out there, like a chant, isn't it? Like a song. And a lot of modern poetry comes out of song. Songwriting is just the most prevalent form of modern poetry, most popular at least. So repetition is like a chorus, isn't it? You can do that. It's a good idea. Keep being inspired. Get in touch. Get writing. Get sending them in. hoppydan@hotmail.com. Let's make this epic poem for October plenty. I'm really excited. There's already some good stuff in.
Okay. Oh, hello. I'm back from the woods, as you can tell. And that was great. What an amazing sunset. Just wonderful. Right. So we've sort of come to the end of the workshop, really. Thank you very much for being part of it. I hope it's been useful. I know that a lot of people, when they think about poetry, think it should be high art. I don't really think that's applicable here. Our poetry is very much about having fun, conveying a meaning, and remembering as well, because obviously poetry is really good for remembering lines. A good example of which is a limerick, for instance, and we've had a limerick sent in while I was out in the woods, actually. It's from Terry, and he's from Newcastle, and I've read it 3 times, and I think I can remember it. If I don't sue me, but I'll have a go. Here we go. The harvest has been gathered in. From Penzance to Norfolk's King's Lynn, from Wick down to Dover, the reaping is over. Time for a beer or a gin. Thank you very much, Terry. Indeed, it is time for a beer or a gin, if you're over 18, obviously. Before I go away and have a beer or a gin, though, I think I probably owe you something a little bit more structured, just to get you started, if you're stuck. So I've written down a few simple ideas to get you off the launch pad with your poem, if you're stuck. So here are the things that I think you should do. First thing you should do is brainstorm your starting point. Okay, don't force the poem to come out in ready to read form. Just get your place where you want to start down on a piece of paper. It doesn't have to be in poetic form, just what you want to say at the start of your poem. Because I think often once you start, the rest of it tends to flow, or it does for me anyway. Once you've got your starting point, and you're still not quite sure though, try and just free write. Just write it in prose. Write what you want to say in prose. The story of your poem or the imagery that you want to convey. Write it in prose first. Then you can think about what sort of style you want your poem to be. And my advice at this point is to steal it. So think of a poem that you love and try and steal that style, whether it's a sonnet, whether it's rhyming couplets, whether it's free poetry, any kind of poem at all. Give it some style, but steal it if you can't think of one of your own. And then go and read some poems as well, because if you're still stuck then maybe you just need to get your head into poetry. Read some poems, read them out loud. There's a bit more of that in a second. Very important, this. When you're writing your poem, write it for you. Write the poem that you'd like to hear. Don't try and impress anybody, or don't try and write it because you think somebody might like it. Just write the poem that you like, that makes you smile or makes you inspired or amazed or happy or sad. And then when you've done your poem, when you've written it, most important, read it out loud. I don't think poems are really there to hide on the page. Get them out, get them read. If you get stuck, take a break. Go for a walk in the woods. Good idea. And then when you've got your poem done, when you've written it, read it out loud again, and then revise it. Don't be afraid to mess about with it. Don't be afraid to pick it apart and put it back together again. Really, really, really important, okay? All of those things will help you make the poem that you want to make. And then, of course, you send it to me at hoppydan@hotmail.com. The last thing is a very, very special book by a very, very special man. And that man is Michael Rosen, who's a wonderful poet, a great children's poet, a great poet in his own right. And he has written a book called What is Poetry? Okay, there it is. Okay, it's a fabulous book. The Essential Guide to Reading and Writing Poems. Get on Amazon and get this book. If you really are serious about wanting to go and do some more writing and poetry, it's an invaluable resource. It's really interesting and really well written, really funny. But also, you know, it's full of good tips and full of good poetry as well. So there you go. End of me, beginning of Michael. He says everything that I've just said, but much more eloquently and in much greater depth. So go and get yourself a copy of that. So I don't think there's anything else for me to say. Thank you very much for sticking with me through this. I know it's been a bit sort of haphazard, but there again, poetry is something that is a bit like a bar of soap. Once you think you've got it, it slips out of your hands. So maybe this workshop's reflected that a bit. Most importantly, come along and listen and watch, obviously. Come along and watch and listen on Sunday to October Plenty. You might see our poem performed. And on that subject, if you've got verse, if you've got something you want to send to me, please, please, please do send it to hoppydan@hotmail.com. Try and send it by Friday, okay? Because I'm really trying to get that written on Friday or maybe Saturday. So sooner the better for that. Thank you again for listening. Thanks for coming for a walk with me and Nutmeg. Now, go and make some beautiful poetry. I can't wait to see it.
Well done! That was amazing! What an extraordinary poem you've written! I can't wait to hear it all put together and read out by proper actors. That'll be incredible. Well done, everybody. Now, if you enjoyed that, or even if you didn't, come back tomorrow at 11 a.m. and meet Heather. We're going to make some corn dollies together, and she's going to tell you all about the amazing Goddess series. See you tomorrow, 11 a.m.